how to make sure your files are safe. That's what this is all about. So, okay.
Okay, so the first thing that we're going to start with, can you all see my screen? Is it sharing the right thing?
I see it.
All right,
Yes.
I have like 13 things open and it's not cooperating. So the first thing we want to talk about is just what memory is. So just like it is for you and I, it's a way of storing information. Sometimes that works in my brain, sometimes it doesn't. I am not pregnant, but my husband says that COVID has made me have pregnancy brain because I can't remember anything. And so I have to store things differently now. And we're going to kind of talk about kind of how that works on your computer when you can't remember things or when it can't remember things, like my brain. So there's a couple of words we hear thrown around. And I'm not going to lie to you, even until I put this together, did I actually know what all of these stood for. So don't feel like this is knowledge that like a regular person walking off the street has to know. I just always heard these terms, and so I thought it might be nice to actually know what they meant. So the first one is RAM. It's random access memory, which we're going to talk about what that means in just a minute. Storage is your hard drive, your flash drive, the cloud, the F drive. Those are the ones that we refer to probably the most when we think of saving something. And then ROM is read-only memory, which the only time I ever think of that is like a CD-ROM. We used to, it was a CD-ROM was the driver. Ray's laughing at me, but that's the only time I, as like a regular person, ever talked about ROM, except that I knew that when I bought a computer, you had to look for certain things. Anymore, technology has really improved, and so we've added space to all of those so that we can have, more things stored and more ability to run things. But Ray and I were kind of brainstorming a way to help this be a little more understandable. So I'm going to turn it over. Ray, do you have anything you want to add to this before we talk about the laundry?
The only thing I want to add is that, so almost every electronic gadget you can think of, your phone, a tablet, a computer, all those different things have a combination of these, this kind of memory. So there's this dedicated memory that tells the computer how to operate. That's ROM. The random access memory is what gives you the ability to work on a bunch of different things. The more memory you have there, the more you can work on at one time. And then some way to store the stuff long term. And so we just want you to kind of get, have an understanding there. So yeah, we did come up with kind of a unique way of looking at it. If you want to show the next slide. So we thought about a couple of different ways of doing it, and you might have to move your, you might have to change the way that your Zoom is showing our pictures so you can see all the screen. But so the deal is that we looked at some different analogies. We kind of like the laundry analogy. Okay, so think of RAM as being the clothes that you're wearing today, the stuff that you have on your body, the stuff that you're using right now. Storage is where you put your clothing when you don't need it for a while. You know where it is, you know how to get to it, you know about what is where, you have a good idea where to start looking if you're missing something. But it's stuff you put away, and it might be in the closet so you can get to it really quickly. It might be in the basement in a tub where you only get to it seasonally, or when I lose 20 pounds again. That's a personal observation on my part. And then ROM for us. So this is interesting because it's the stuff that you can't change. It's there. It's kind of the rules of the road. In most computers, this will have all the operating parameters that the computer needs to follow. Things run on top of it, but this is the stuff that never ever changes. Ned right now is saying, yes, but I can change the ROM. It's true, you can, but most of us will never ever have to do that. And so a good example of ROM, we tried to figure this out, so if you can show the next slide. So for instance, for me, one is I will never ever wear a leisure suit ever again. Okay, so this is from the 70s. It's not me, but that's what they look like. And so, I'm hoping people are laughing right now. When you're muted, I really can't tell, but so I'm
smiling.
Yeah, I want to see you in that.
I was telling Ann
to describe the other one. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, Anne accused me of having a light blue leisure suit, which I didn't have. I did have a dark blue one, and then my mother at the time worked at the JCPenney outlet store, and so whatever was returned is what I got to wear in high school, and so mine was a dark green corduroy leisure suit with an orange plaid flannel lining. It was
Nice.
it was not cool.
No, it was 70s.
No, I mean, it was just bad. It was just bad even then.
I
Okay.
really, really wish there was a picture of this.
Yeah, and praise God there's not. Okay. So anyway, good rule, never wear that again in your life. And ROM is the same kind of thing. ROM will have different instruction sets that kind of override the whole computer. You really can't get around them very easily, and they're just there. It's what we operate inside of. Rules that computer programmers and other folks pay attention to. You will probably never have to worry about ROM at all, but if you see the word, that's what it means. Let's quickly get away from this picture.
Oh, I think we should just stay on it.
Just kind of reminisce here for a while. Yeah.
You know, if you put glasses on it, it could look like Ray.
I know it's not real far off. I'm with you, James.
James, if I take it into Photoshop, I can make it look like you.
Well, now whenever I see a leisure suit, I'm going to think of you, Ray, or think of Rom, or if Rom comes up, I'm going to think of this picture.
There you go. I might have to Photoshop John on this, just because I haven't done a leisure suit one of John yet. So.
It will help us all remember, won't it?
That's right. I don't know why that's important, but okay.
Okay, so when you think about memory, the other thing that we think about is measuring it. So how big is a file? And we often see a bunch of terms thrown around, and we don't always think about what they mean. I can tell you, I don't always think about what they mean. But so when you measure memory, it's truly just a bunch of ones and zeros. I found this picture, it's a bunch of zeros, and I can't tell you, it's like a pattern. It's sort of like a genome. Here I go back to my science stuff, but so it all, all those numbers and zeros all add up to do what we need it to do. I'll give you an example that we were just talking about in my household last night. So my husband works for a logistics company, and the place is trying to send a gift card, and it needs to change the size of cardstock that's going into the printer. They were on the phone call for a ridiculously long time to change one little setting in one little piece of this, memory so that it would work right. It took 9 people 4 hours to sit on this phone call. It was painful, but basically it's just changing that one little piece of memory so that it would do what it needed to do. But so for you and I, we're never going to have to enter all these, know anything about these ones and zeros. It's just nice to know that they live there and that that's how it's saving it. And so when you and I see like a file that says that it's a kilobyte, or when your iPhone tells you that you're almost out of storage and you need to delete something, you know why they're telling you that. So bits are literally the zeros and ones.
Yeah, and the really short history of this is when you start looking at the early digital machines, they were based on vacuum tubes, and those vacuum tubes were either on or off, right? And if they were on, it would complete a circuit. If they were off, they wouldn't. They were replaced in the 60s with transistors. A transistor is just nothing more than an electronic switch. And then when we moved to computer-based machines, really that's just tens of thousands of transistors built into a single chip. So even when you carve the whole thing down, some of you might have seen Apollo 13, that movie with Tom Hanks, and where they said that basically they use this room full of computers, and that's what got them to the moon. And basically those computers are now the size of your phone. This is why all these switches just now are located in really, really tiny circuitry. So just going through these. So a bit, the smallest unit of memory, is virtually one switch. Is it on? Is it off? Is it 0 or is it 1? 0 being off, 1 being on. A byte is really what it took to make a single character in the early computers. So so we look at 8 bits as being a byte, and so you can think of a byte as being characters. So like the next one, kilobyte, that means it's 1,000 bytes. You can think of that as 1,000 characters of information. A megabyte is 1,000,000, gigabyte is 1,000,000,000, terabyte, and it goes on by, always by a factor of 10. So, I'm sorry, power goes up exponentially from there. James, this one's for you. So I took a tour of Joel Osteen's mega church back in one of my former jobs. And at that point,
Right.
they were streaming 2 petabytes, which is above a terabyte, 2 petabytes of video information every weekend. And
That's a new one.
And that was 10 years ago. So you can imagine just how much information it takes to do those kinds of things. It's kind of crazy.
Wow. Incredible.
Any questions on those things so far? Have we lost everybody yet?
We might be thinking.
We're biting. We're definitely biting.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on. This makes it a little more concrete. So for instance, if I was storing the phrase "I love you," that's 10 bytes of information, because spaces count. Spaces are characters too. Small pictures, really small pictures, about 312,000 bytes of information. Not that used to be a lot. Today it's not so much. A large picture can be very huge depending on what file size it's in and what we're doing with it. Most like the pictures coming off your phone, even really good high quality phones like the newest iPhone, those are probably going to be in the 200 to 300 megabyte size. They don't get much bigger than that. When you get bigger is when you start working on really like publication grade stuff. Songs, roughly 2 to 3 megabytes, depending on the size of the song and the file format. And then movies can be big. Movies stored in their original form are about 2 gigabytes. So the reason that we tell you this is because this tells you what you can store and where.
Oh, hold on. James just said something.
What's that, James?
I said I remember the floppy disk, which was what, 144 kilobytes before they expanded to what we have as the flash drive, and it took a while.
Yeah, it was 1.
to even come up with a megabyte.
If I remember right, I was gonna say if I remember right, Ned, you can jump in there, but I think it was 1.4 for a high density 3.5-inch floppy. It was 512K for one of those 5.25-inch jobbers. And
Correct.
I can
They
tell you,
used to have a little tab
so I bought
inside
the
of them,
first.
if you remember.
I still have. Well, no, you don't hear this. I still have the punch that lets you flip it over and use the other side. So, ooh, yay!
Kaylee, didn't you
Forget
find
it.
floppy disks?
Yeah. So I bought the. I'm telling you, for us who've been around, this is like, yeah. It's going in the museum. So I bought the first computer for the. What's that, Ned? I felt like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, something wrong with the sound. For some reason, it's not cooperating really quick. I wanted to tell you, do you remember when we used to do that little hack where you can actually cut a notch of the other side so you can actually flip the floppy?
Yeah.
So you can record on both sides?
Yeah. The good old days.
That was,
For us youngins, we
So,
won't make you say what year that
Yeah.
was.
just to give you guys an idea too, I don't know if Ray is bringing this up or not, but just a movie will actually take 4.8 terabyte, which is, I think Ray is coming to that.
Well, it depends. Yeah, it depends on how you store it. but yeah, it can be that big. So
So to put this,
when you look at this, when we look at running out of memory, the first things I start looking for are pictures and videos. Those take up a lot of space, and you can imagine some of this stuff you just can't even attach to an email. It's so large.
so for example, I'll use Wendy. Yesterday, they had a training for the ISCs and she recorded the Zoom meeting. There is no way that she can send that in an email to me, or, because the file is so big that it won't go across. But if we save it somewhere that we can jointly access it, then I can then put it onto my machine. And so that's where a lot of, if you've had a photographer take your pictures, sometimes they will either give you a flash drive with your pictures on it, or they'll put it in something like Dropbox, which is a paid cloud service that then they would give you a password. You would go up and you would be able to download those files onto your machine, because those files are so big that it's very hard to transfer them like over email.
Yep.
So I was just looking, I'm going to put this in iPhone terms because, as we know, I'm an iPhone user. So I have a 10 something or other. I have 64 gigabytes of storage on my iPhone. The very first one I had was like 10. And then it was 18. And I was like, oh my gosh, 18. I'll never fill that up. And then by the time I upgraded again, it was like way full. And we just keep adding. But, all those, the gifts that people send, or the, pictures, all that kind of stuff. If your phone or your iPad, they'll say, hey, you're almost out of storage. It's just because all those things are there. And so that's why they'll say, oh, if you back it up to Google Photos, or you back it up to, I was old enough that I had an external hard drive that I would back up all my old computers and all my music to. So all of my illegally downloaded music back in the day was saved on an external hard drive because I didn't want to take up space on my computer. Anymore, technology has advanced so much and memory size has advanced so much that it's not as important for us as like a novice to know, just because they are pretty big. But things like your pictures, people have had, I know that when you talk to somebody about like, fire safety and all that kind of stuff, they're like, oh, back your pictures up somewhere and put them someplace else so that, if your house were to catch on fire and it was on your computer, you would have them. That's where that cloud storage and all that kind of stuff comes in. And you can pay for a subscription. There are free options. And we're going to talk about what it means to save some things on the cloud here in just a minute as well. Any comments about file size? I know this is a little dry. We'll get there, I promise. Crickets. All right, moving on. I get the hint. All right, so
Okay.
I saved a file. And it has a name, it has a dot, it has some random letters at the end. Did you ever really think about what that was telling the computer? Probably not, but it might be nice to know. So what happens when you double click on something? The computer actually looks at the extension, so that dot whatever, and decides what kind of file it is. And then it has associated certain kinds of files with a program. And so it checks to look and see if you have a program that will open that type of file. And then if you do, it opens it. So if you have, I'm just trying to think, a PDF, you get emailed a PDF and you double click on it in your email. Your computer is basically going out to their list and saying, hey, this is a PDF. Do I know what that means? A, do I have that program? B, and oh, I do? Okay, now I'm going to open it. You may have tried to click on a file before that you didn't have, and Windows will say, hey, I don't have this program, and give you this little option to like go out to the web and search. Or I tried to see if I could find one really quick so I could show you, but I didn't have one that wasn't associated. But basically, every time you name a file, you're giving it a name so you can find it and you know how to differentiate it. You have that dot, and then that extension is how your computer goes out and looks to see how that all makes sense. So then when you start to think about, maybe you saved it as a Word document and then we saved it as a PDF, that's because we're going to use a different program to open it. So the quick guides that I've been sending out, I've changed the format. I've made like different fonts and that kind of stuff. And I want it to look the same to you when I send it. And so I've saved them as a PDF, even though I made them in Word, because it may not look exactly the same on your computer as on mine if we opened it in Word. I think I shared this before, but when I worked at Capitol, we had a set of fonts that were like our branded fonts, but they weren't installed on any computers except our own. And so every time I did a presentation, I had to save it as a PowerPoint or as a PDF, not as a PowerPoint, because the fonts wouldn't match the brand because they weren't on somebody else's computer. So just lots of times where the extension helps the different programs open and help make your life a little easier. Ray, anything to add about the basic extensions?
The only other thing I want you to keep in mind is that when, there are going to be times when you're going to change the name of a file. And I do this all the time, so that, a file that was sent to me by somebody else, they might have named it in a way that doesn't make any sense, and at least to me personally. And so I want to change the name of the file to reflect, what it is. Maybe somebody's evaluation 2020, or, that kind of thing. And that's fine. You can change the name to whatever you want. Try never to change the file extension, anything after that period. Because when you do that, the computer now doesn't know what it is, and it doesn't know how to open it, and it doesn't know what to do with it. And unless you can remember what it was, you're not going to get it back. You can sit there all day long trying different extensions until you find that one that actually drives it. So anything that's after that period, always try to leave that alone, because that's what your computer needs to understand the file.
Hey, Ray, what about programs that can open up several different type of extensions?
Yeah, so, and we see this a lot when you talk about image programs, right? Because on your computer right now, probably all of our computers, there's probably 5 to 10 programs that all can open up, in this case, a JPEG file. That can happen. And so the computer actually has a way for you to figure out which one to use. It has the primary one that it wants to use to open up that file extension. And so you can get to it by just right-clicking on the file, and you'll see an entry that says Open With. And when you do that, you'll see a list of all the different programs that you have that are associated with that file, and then you can pick that one you want to enter. So that comes in handy.
Show that really quick.
Here, you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay, so for instance, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
So I'm going to go to my picture directory. I'm going to go to, let's see. Okay, so here are all the Photoshop pictures I've ever done of John Picard. So here, if I right-click on John Picard as Queen Elizabeth, I can come in here and I can say Open With, and then here are all the different programs that I have on my computer that can open that up. So we're just going to pick one. I'm really hoping people are laughing at this.
I don't know that
I'm laughing. I'm just muted.
He's beautiful.
The word?
Oh my God, who's that?
So regal.
Yeah.
My clown.
You gotta like that with the corgis. That's good. And so we can do this any number of different ways, right? So I can come in here and I can say Open With, and now let's use Photo. So they'll load up this other program. It'll load up the picture. This is John as Paris Hilton. And then I can do, if I'm going to edit it in this program, I can do whatever it is I'm going to do. So So it just gives you the option of using different programs to get the same thing done. Does that make sense?
So Ray, the
Yes.
thing that I think sometimes gets confusing is if I have a file, sometimes I should go to the program and open it. And sometimes I can just go to the directory and open and it knows. So are there pluses and minuses? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like the Word and then
There's
opening a
only
file?
a couple of, yeah, there's only a couple of times that I can think of where you would potentially want to go to the program first. One would be one like, well, some proprietary programs like Gatekeeper and ones like that, they have to be accessed a certain way in order to work. So like, in theory, you could go out to the, to the hard drive, find the database and try to start up Gatekeeper from the back end. That's not going to work because it needs the front end to work. So you have to kind of go in exactly the right way. Kaylee and I do a lot of work in Access. And some of those you could double click on and it would come up. Other ones would come up and be protected and you wouldn't be able to see a thing because they need to be unencrypted through the front end, if that makes sense. They
Okay.
they work hand in glove with a program and need both to be able to operate.
I feel like you might have just crossed into, I'm not sure what you're talking about there.
Okay, let me put it another way. So most of the time you can click on a file and it'll open up. If it doesn't, that's your indication that you need to go at it a different way or you need help getting into it. That's what I would say. That's the simple way of saying it.
So for me, if I know where the file is really easy, a lot of times I'll go just to the directory and I'll let the computer do the searching. But Windows or Microsoft has built in those like recently used so that when you open like Word, it'll show you the last 10 things that you had open in there. And sometimes if I know I just worked on it, I just cheat and just go to Word and let Microsoft have it there. And so then it just pulls it because it's so easy.
Yeah.
I can show you what I mean. Let me find one that's open. Just because it's nice sometimes. It doesn't like finding it. Does everybody know what I mean by that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so, it's really just, there it is, the ease of access of finding it. So I could go into my directory and find these exact same things. But if I know it's been there, sometimes I cheat and just go here. But for most programs, it's not going to matter if you go into Word or go into the program and open it, or if you go into the directory and open it, because that file extension is telling the computer to help you do that. Okay. Now that I got sidetracked, I apologize about that. So I know this seems like a little over our head. Like, why do I need to know all this? What does it matter? Well, we're trying to build a foundation so that when it gets to looking at things like all of these file types that you're seeing here, we kind of understand what that means. These are just, I was thinking about even Word. Word in the old way didn't have as much sophistication as Word now. So it used to be just .doc, and now it's like .docx. It doesn't mean a whole lot if you just have a plain old black and white document with no special characters, no special margins, nothing, and just Times New Roman. But for things that are more sophisticated, sometimes you want to make sure that it's opening in the same manner, because things like, I was trying to think, like if you pulled an ISP out of Imagine and you didn't pull it out in the most updated version of Word or the one that it wanted, it would come out and it would look really funky, because they're the same program, but they were just a little bit different in how they save things and the sophistication that they can do.
So it would come out looking like Ray in his outfit?
Once again, that was not me.
It will be by tomorrow, though.
I can prove it because I can't grow that kind of a mustache. But yeah, the point here too is that, so like what you were saying, Ann, and it might not even be able to open up, like a docx might not even be able to open up in an older version of Word. There's just new functionality that they've built into the file system, and some can be opened, some can't.
But so sometimes
Yeah.
if you send it to someone, you'll see that they'll send it at the lower level so that no matter what version people are running, then you can open it in yours. So, but if you look at save as, it'll give you like the option to save or to save as like a Windows 97 or just, that's why they do that, is because it's trying to match the exact program age. Ned, you want to jump in? You were talking about if a file is located on the cloud or the firewall, or the cloud or outside server behind the firewall.
Yes. I wanted to point out that Ann was right about the shortcut or the icon on your desktop. It's similar to what you see on Explorer. However, there is a lot of shortcuts that you can create to actually go outside of your computer, like into a server, which is what we have right now in admin or at the county, or also it could point into the cloud. So in that case, you gotta understand something. That's true, it would open the application, but if the application is residing on your computer, it will be a lot more faster. So you have to be patient, especially with probably at this moment, like connecting into, into the admin servers or the F drive or something like that. Sometimes you would have to be just more patient than if you're trying to access a file on your computer directly. Does that make sense?
It does. And sometimes if you click on it and it's on the F drive and you aren't on the VPN, it's going to say that it can't access it. It doesn't mean that it's gone. It means that you haven't opened the tunnel to get to it.
That is a good point.
If you were working, let's say I have something saved in the cloud, but my Wi-Fi is down, and so I'm not online. It will show it that it's there, and then when I go to click on it, it won't open. And that's not because it's gone. It's not gone forever. It just means that the connection, it can't follow the path to get there.
So one other thing I wanted to go over too was that, so with those file extensions, when somebody sends you an email and they've attached something to it, you want to be really, really careful about any attachment that you open. Make sure it's coming from somebody you trust. Make sure it makes sense with the email that they're sending. It would be really good if you were expecting it. If not, it's good practice to give them a call and say, did you send me this email? If it's at all questionable. We had a bunch go out just last month where they all came from John Picard, and they said, I need you to look at this immediately. And they had some PDF or JPEG attached to it. And if you clicked on that, that would very likely be a virus that they were using that file format to infect your computer. So be very, very careful about what's going on. Like in that case, John never says, I need you to do this immediately. He never does that. So that gave me a clue that I need to give him a call and say, so did you send me this? And what is it? If we don't do that, then you just run the risk of any of these formats infecting your computer at some point.
If you find something like that and you're questioning it, hit the phishing button. Don't forward it on to somebody else, because the likeliness that, then it looks like it's coming from you and somebody may just click on it. They shouldn't have, after what Ray just said, but you and I know that we get so many emails in a day that it's easy to just start clicking on things. But when we look up at the files up here, sometimes you'll have to, somebody will send you like a PNG and a GIF. Those are all pictures. Most of the time, your computer's going to know what you want it to do, and it'll just do it. But for example, embedding a video. So I can take, we can go out to YouTube and watch a video, and it's saved in a specific file extension because it's a YouTube video. But maybe for orientation, I don't want to have to go out to the web to do that. I just want to have it living on my computer. So if technology is funky on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. at admin, I have it there and I can still use it for orientation. Sometimes I will actually convert that file. And so there oftentimes are free versions that you can do that with. That's something that you don't have to do a lot, but that's when, feel free to reach out to our IT folks or to somebody and say, hey, how do I convert this? What do I do? Do you have a good one that you use for this? So that you can use those files in a different way.
When you're in doubt, just ask. It won't hurt to ask.
Bobby's really great at finding a free version sometimes of things. Ned's really great at finding a free version. Kaylee helps me walk me through it because sometimes I'm a little slow. But, you know, just making sure that you know, like, because sometimes you do want to use it for something, or maybe you're trying to upload something and somebody sent it to you in some weird way, and then you're trying to upload it into IntelliView and it won't save. You know, looking to see if we can save it as a different kind of file so that you can upload it to IntelliView so that it can be opened or something like that. You know, there's a pretty long list that you can put up there, but every once in a while, you know, maybe somebody took a picture on their phone and it came through in a different format. Ray, do you want to talk real quickly about what a zip file does or what that means for storage?
Sure. So there's a lot of times when you need to send something to somebody and it's a huge file, or there's a bunch of files. Like I'll give you a good example. Right now, when we just did the evaluations and you had to sign the mission, vision, values, and your job description and your evaluation, Cindy really didn't want to get those as all separate documents. And so what I did is I collected all of mine together for my group, and then I combined them all into one zipped file. So it's just a compressed file that contains a bunch of other files. And it lets me send one file as opposed to 100. And then when Cindy got it, she can just double click on it, expand it out, and she has all the files that she needs to have.
And Ray, how do you do that? Because I've run across that many times where, like, if I have to send out parts of the ISP out, I'm sending out 8 individual things.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. You want to unshare yours and,
Yep.
and I'll share mine?
Go for it.
Okay. So let's see, what do we want to put together here?
Ray, we don't see anything yet, just FYI.
Okay, so we'll go back to pictures. We'll go right back to John's pictures here. And so let's say I wanted to send this one, again, a really great picture. There's got to be somebody laughing over this one. And we'll send that one, the Queen and Cindy.
Was that for? Is that John and COVID-19?
yeah, definitely socially distancing on the island. Okay, so what I do, and I'll make this look bigger so you can see what I'm doing. So I highlighted a couple of different pictures, or if I wanted to, I could press Control A and highlight all the pictures. And then I just right-click on one of them, and you'll see a Send To option. And so I click on Send To and then Compress.
Oh.
And they'll come up, and then I can, we'll just call this John's Pics. And later on, if anybody wants these, I can just send this to them as a single file. So
now, Ray, I was thinking about Kelly's question. Do most people, like if you are on a remote device or a portable device, do you have the ability to open a zip file, or would attaching separate files still be a better option?
If you were doing it to a phone, that might be more problematic. Generally speaking, different operating systems have different ways of doing it, and you know, like if I'm sending it Apple iPhone to Apple iPhone, you know, it's probably going to be okay. But in this case, zip files are pretty portable that way. They can go from different places, but your experience might vary. So it's a good thing to try. Kelly, to get back to your question then, so when somebody gets this file as an extension,
Right.
then they would save it to their hard drive, like I've done. And then when you click on it, when you double click on it, you'll see a list of all the files that are in there. And then you get this special extract all button. All they have to do is say extract all, and it'll say, okay, where do you want to store it at? Show you what that one looks like. And then you pick the directory you want to store it in, say extract, and it unzips all of them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So it does take a little bit of knowledge on the receiving side to be able to, like, the difference is that you can't just open it right from that email, where if it was a piece, if it was part of a PDF, you could just double click on it and it would open right there.
Yeah, I may still continue my one at a time. But it's nice to know how.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes if you're trying to send something via an email, it's too big to send, but if you put it in a zip file, you can send it via email. If that makes sense. So it depends on how you're trying to get it to somebody too.
Okay.
All right, so we're almost done. So hopefully you're thinking of other questions that we haven't talked about, but now we get to my fun part, is the organizing names and setting up folders. So as you all know, I'm a little bit of a neat freak when it comes to certain things. Like I saw in Ray's directory just a minute ago that he has like 4 files that say new file and they don't have actual names. And I have the urge to like go in there and fix them right now. But I just wanted to kind of walk you through, you're going to find things that make sense to you in a way to, where you save things and how you do it. But I was going to kind of show you just kind of, does everybody know how to make a file folder rather? So you can right click and say new. And I can pull that up so you can see. But I would encourage you to go,
Tanner.
Uh-oh, Ned's getting new computers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I'm on the mute.
No, you are. You're fine. I just saw you walk in with a new computer. I'm just killing time.
It's been like a busy day. First dealt with the cops, and now we're getting deliveries. So.
So if you can see, like this is my documents folder. And we're going to talk in a minute about what makes sense to save where. But I have a bunch of folders here, and then if I click on them, I like to have more folders inside because I want to be able to find things really quick. But so here, certifications. I have some things that I use all the time that are living out here, and then things that I don't use as much. So the one thing that we did with the SSA folder on the F drive was that we looked at it a little bit because the things that you were using were like 9 clicks deep. So you had to keep opening folder after folder after folder to get to those things. So as you're organizing the things that make sense for you, you can pull those up to the front a little bit more, and you can decide how you save these. You can give them names. And if you notice, now that we've just been talking about all of this, as you look across, you can see if it's based on the extension, it knows what program it's going to open it in, and it's telling me the memory size as well. If I look in the file folder, that's when it's like a bunch of other things. So I use my documents. That means that they're saved on our server. So they're hopefully backed up, right?
That's the next slide.
But I also have things in the cloud. I have saved things on a flash drive before. We risk a lot of security issues when you put a lot of stuff on the flash drive because I don't know about you, but I've lost a flash drive or 2 in my life. They're itty bitty and they get stuck in a pocket or left in a computer. So with Microsoft's cloud storage, they have started to make it easier so you don't have to take everything on that device anymore if you're going to be on a computer somewhere that has access to the internet. And so we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But I just kind of wanted to show you, like, this is my documents folder. I know some of you have folders on your desktop. I know some of you have just forms on your desktop. You're just looking for a place to keep that so that you can get to it easy, because you want to be able to do the work on your computer. You don't have to spend 5 hours looking for just the file to get to the work that you need to do. Ray, or Ned, or Kaylee, I know you're on here too, any recommendations on naming and doing all that kind of stuff?
I just think it should be something that means something to you. The other thing you want to do is, for the most part, you want to stay away from special characters. Meaning ampersands, asterisks, those kinds of things. Sometimes they work, sometimes you just can't do them where you're using them, and so it's smarter just to keep that out of the equation and just use numbers and characters.
That's true. Even with correctors, everything reverts back to the original. So it's kind of like when Ray started with the computers, the old days, and the DOS, and how you the naming schema. Even though Microsoft actually takes spaces, try to stay away from spaces if you can. So, for example, like you can create a file and you can name it. This is my vacation file for this date. So try to make them a little bit smaller for the naming or the labels. And also try to, if you have to put spaces, use the underscore, that dash on the bottom, to actually get it attached together. So try to stay away from using spaces. Other characters, I would like to say it's like the @signs, for example. Right now, for some, they started this about, I think, a couple years ago, and because they introduced the 365s and team and the cloud and all of that, so they figured out to where you can actually tag someone. So you could actually make a label for a document or something, but in reality, and you do not know it, that you're tagging someone on your contact list. And I learned that in my hacking class, believe it or not, that some people were sharing videos with other people by using the @sign. So if you're trying to just keep it personal and things like that, it helps to think twice before you start putting names on your documents.
Cool.
Does that make sense? Any question?
It's a quiet crowd today.
Guys, please don't be scared. Feel free to ask anything. You know, we're not going to call names or whatever. We're just here to learn, right?
So the next big question is, where do we save them? So we know what they are. We know how, kind of try to understand how much space they take up, but where do we save it? And how do I know the best way to save it, or the best place? Is there a right? Is there a wrong? So this is just kind of a list of some of the ones that we hear about that in our agency. Ray, I'm going to let you take this because I don't actually know why the C drive is the C drive.
So again, it goes back to you got to be in Ned's and my era to really get this, but and maybe James too, but originally when computers first came out, they just had these little floppy drives, and so a cheap one would have one drive, a really good one would have two drives, and so that was A and B drive, right? And so then when they eventually developed hard drives, they wanted to give it a letter but make sure it was not already being used, and so C is what came up, and it's just kind of stuck. So generally speaking, most computers will come with drives labeled C. There's no magic to it. It could be labeled anything. If you have a bunch of hard drives on your computer, and you can see that by calling up our File Explorer, you'll see different drives. On our computers, we have the C drive, the F drive, the I drive, the O drive. Those are just different places to store. It doesn't really beyond the fact that the C drive is usually your internal hard drive. That's the only difference. The F drive is a server-based resource, meaning that it's attached to our servers downtown here in Lancaster, and so everything you write gets put to that drive. You know, and a cloud-based drive is, you know, like OneDrive or Dropbox or one of those other ones. They're all kind of the same thing. It's a cloud-based resource where I can drop stuff and put it. It works just like the server drive.
So if I was Carissa, I'm going to pick on her for a minute, and I'd lost my documents as many times as she has in the last 2 months, I would save everything to the cloud, because then at least I could access it again.
Yeah, well, and this brings up the desktop, and Kaylee, this might be a good one for you to jump in on, or Ned too. But the desktop's kind of a weird thing in that you can store stuff right on your desktop. The desktop really just occupies a certain place in memory.
Yes, I wanted to say something. The old days, Ray remembers, like we used to keep everything on the computer. So a lot of us guys, we would look for a big hard drive, as big as we can get, and we will store that on the computer. Nowadays, things changed. Most of the things, most of the, I should say, computers or laptops or whatever, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller on the spaces. Why? Because they're trying to force everyone to either save on a server or save in the cloud. And in all honestly, I think even the servers are probably in the next few years are going to go away. The cloud is going to be everything. So, and it's better for viruses, it's better for malware, it's better for spams, it's better for a lot of things, backup, disaster recovery, and things like that. So right now, this is very critical, and that's, I think, one of the reasons we have this training. Before you start saving anything on your personal or even work laptop or PC, you need to ask yourself something. Am I going to store this forever, or am I going to store this record for just a month or two? Am I storing this record for a week or two? Is it temporary? Is it forever? So you have to ask yourself these questions, and that will make a decision on where you should put this record, or where you should put this file or this document. And again,
Go ahead, Ed. Well, I was just going to say that this is a nice segue into the last slide, and I know we're losing some people for another meeting at 2 o'clock. So I just want to, so we put this together just to ask the kind of questions that Ned was just asking. So, you know, one is, if I store it here, is somebody else backing this up for me? So if I store it to my own hard drive, no one's backing that up. If your hard drive crashes, you're just done, because if you're not backing it up, nobody is, and there's no way to get that back.
There's a Sex and the City episode about that where she doesn't back it up and she loses all of her columns, and like she has a meltdown and she's like, why did no one ever tell me you had to back things up? How do you know about backing it up? You know.
Back in the early days, I had written a program to take case notes for case managers across the state. And Kurt Smalera, the guy who's now with New York, he was in Belmont County at the time. And his hard drive started to go, and he asked me to come over and help him out. And I said, okay, so when's the last time you backed up? And he said, I've never backed up. And he had 3 years of case notes for those 3 counties, you know, Belmont and Washington and Noble. And every time we moved something else would die. And so you felt kind of like the captain of the Titanic, you know, okay, I'm going to save you, but you're not going to get saved. And it was rough. He lost a bunch of notes. So that part's really, really important. Same thing. The flash drive would be the same thing as a local drive. Yeah, Ned, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. I want just to mention something. It helps with malware and virus protections. Believe it or not, there's companies, they lose millions. Matter of fact, I just read an article not too long ago about a huge company in Texas that actually filed bankruptcy and laid off 600 plus employees because they got hit with a malware, and they were asking them for, I can't remember the exact number, how many millions of dollars in Bitcoins for them to give them the code so they can actually access their equipment. And come to find out that the gentleman who was responsible for the backup and disaster recovery was on vacation. So they couldn't even like shut everything down and restart from scratch and stuff. So the company ended up filing bankruptcy and laid everyone off. So it's,
Licking County had the same thing. Not the Licking County Board of DD, but the Licking County government had that same problem about 3 years ago, where they were hit with malware, and they did wind up paying the ransom to get their data back. It can be very bad.
so it's extremely critical. That's what we're trying to say, all of this. So it's extremely critical on like where do you put the files at, where it goes, does it need to be backed up, it does not, things like that.
So, and like I said, I know we've got people who need to leave for the 2 o'clock meeting, so I just want to finish this up really quick. You're going to get a copy, or you're going to have access to this.
I'll send it out.
Yeah, and what I really want to identify is when I use the word mostly or kind of, you know, and Carissa can kind of attest to this with the desktop. Storing to the desktop. Yeah, storing to the desktop the way we do it. You can use it offline, but really what you're doing is saving it to some stored locations on our server, but only when you're connected to our network. So it updates it. In the meantime, it tries to keep track of everything and then moves it all together. But that's also a point where you can lose stuff. And that's what happened with Carissa. We've been working remotely so much that it lost some of the work that she had done. It was unable to upgrade that or to coordinate that with our stored version of our desktop. And so you wind up losing that. So for me, the desktop's not a really good place to store stuff. You want to store it on the F drive. You want to store it in My Documents. That's backed up when your system is connected to our VPN. You just want to be able to do it where it's good.
I will use the desktop if it's something quick. Like maybe I'm saving a bunch of pictures that I'm going to then put in a program or, you know, in a document. And I know I'm only going to use them for a couple minutes. I want to be able to get them really fast. I will put them on the desktop. But that's something that I know that if it were gone, it's not like the world is going to end. I'm not going to save the final document there if I'm not like still working on it. You know, it's only a place where it's like a quick, you don't always want to count on that it's still going to be there.
Okay. What questions does anybody have?
Is My Document works kind of like a desktop where you put every single file in it and retrieve it?
Yes, so My Documents is a safe place to put it. It is one that's backed up when you're connected to our system. So it has that's a good option for me. If you want to be totally secure on things that are like mission critical, I tend to save it to My Documents, and then I'll save it to a local place on my hard drive, just so that I have my own backup of it. But My Documents is a good safe place to put it.
You could also secure your documents, by the way, inside of Word, if you have to.
What does that mean?
Okay, so it's like what Ray was saying is like if you wanted to make it like more secure and things like that, try to use some other means. If you save your documents under Word, if you go to the property, there is an option where you can actually secure your document, that even if someone actually open your document, it will still ask them. You can make it like ask them for their initial or ask them for
yeah,
for the encryption. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a whole class.
It is.
Once we get into Word and Excel and those things, how to make your files so that they're secure from a HIPAA standpoint. That's going to be a whole thing for us. Sure. Yeah. Good point.
So the moral of the story is, if I have everything saved to my desktop right now, what should I do?
I'd move it.
Definitely move it.
Hey, let me ask a really quick question. So I am a My Documents saver for things that I'm like kind of working on or that are more like in the works. If I'm not using the VPN right now very much, is it not being backed up?
There's no way for it to back up if it's not connected to our VPN or if you're not connected in the office. So, yep,
Good to think about.
it is a good thing to think about. Yeah.
I've always had problems working with cloud. I mean, for me, it's not, I don't feel quite as comfortable or trustworthy about it because it always seems to be a little bit of a hoop to figure out how to get it into it and to use it as an application as opposed to My Documents. So is that something you guys are going to be covering down the road?
Well, and I'm very curious too. Yeah, we will. But I'm curious too for you guys, now that we have the new VPN, whether you're going to have better luck at the hospital than you have had.
Yes, I'm kind of curious too. Where I'm at now is working very well because I'm in
Yeah.
Reynoldsburg. So I can only assume that it's going to be okay at the hospital in Lancaster.
It should be better, but we'll have to test that out when it gets there. Yeah.
Because one of the problems at the hospital is you got other sites there that are being hit constantly. And sometimes we share the Wi-Fi with the hospital that's open to the public on occasions. But and we have to use a hotspot in our room in order to target VPN.
Sure.
Any other questions? Sherry wants to know if you have a shortcut on your desktop, it also gets backed up, right?
Shortcuts?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Ray.
go ahead. Go ahead.
It really depends. It seriously depends. We're working on something right now, and that's why I wanted to jump in before anybody jumps in. Well, we're working on actually doing an image for our computers here with DD. So in our image, you will not have your personal shortcuts back on your computer. So for us, before we actually image your computer or your laptop or whatever device you have, we will have to make a backup for your personal shortcuts. And that's the only way you're gonna have it back. Otherwise, you will not have your personal shortcuts back. Now, if the problem is with your device itself, like hardware-wise, then I'll go back to what Ray was talking about. You will lose everything. The reason I'm saying that is because shortcuts is just for your computer, for your personal device. It's not a shortcut on a server, for example. Does that make sense?
So when Ned talks about imaging, it's kind of like if you were going to reset the computer back to default or reset your phone back to default. This is just going to be default unique for our agency. So it'd have all those programs on there. A shortcut is just a quick path to get to that program. So if that program, you know, Sherry, if your files are on the F drive that you're using that shortcut for, then those files are still being backed up on the F drive. And if they had to reimage your machine or if that shortcut went away, all you would do is just, you know, go in, right click, create a new shortcut and drag it there.
So this is the reason why I say it's backed up kind of. Okay, so assuming that your computer's healthy and our server backup is healthy, then yeah, your settings on the way you've set up your desktop is being saved to a profile on our servers. That's why when you go from a computer at your office to a computer at the reception desk, you can call up your, you know, you log in and it comes up and tries to look exactly like your computer back at your desk. That's because your profile is being backed up. That part's good. If your profile gets corrupted, or if the computer has trouble, like Ned was saying, that's when when we restore it, it's going to be restored from a common image, not from your particular backup if that's been corrupted. So yeah, so kind of is the answer there. Not sure that helps, Sherry.
Questions? I know it's a lot to take in. I know this is a little bit weightier than some things that we've talked about. When you talk about kilobytes and terabytes and all those really big numbers and sizes and that kind of stuff. We just wanted to kind of let you have a basis before we got into just the extension, so you kind of knew how it all fit together. So as you're playing around or thinking, don't hesitate if you didn't think of something right now and you want to ask something later. You know, we have great resources in our agency that can help you to make life easier, to not lose your data, not lose your files.
I just can't type fast enough. I was afraid you'd all hang up before I got done.
You're fine.
So I think you said a minute ago, though, if I have the shortcut, like I have like an Excel sheet that I go to constantly on my desktop. And it's also in my documents. So if it's a shortcut from that to my documents, that's backed up, right? To my documents?
When you're on the VPN.
Okay, so, but like in the office, if we're back in the office all day, it's automatic. That's all. Yeah, because I have noticed the difference right now with the Excel. Because right now what I'm doing is I'm saving updated Excel every day to my flash drive because it's not connecting up with what's on my desktop at the office.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure though, if I'm back in the office on that computer, those the picturing or image that Ned was talking about, will I still be okay with that sheet being shortcutted to my documents?
Yeah, that image only really comes into play if your computer dies and we have to rebuild it. When we rebuild it, we won't be able to rebuild it from, you know, this image that Ned is talking about is really a picture of a pure new build, perfectly running computer, right? And so he's created that image, kind of a cool deal, really. And then that gets imposed on your computer, and now your computer is this new perfect image thing. But all the old settings and stuff, they're gone. And it's like having a new computer, and you have to reestablish those.
But the things that were saved in her documents are attached to her profile then, and that would be accessible on a new or re-imaged machine as well, correct?
Yeah, it would be.
Okay. That's just that's the main thing. I have a bunch of stuff on my desktop, but that one.
She's like, I can find the other stuff again.
I'd be really messed up if I didn't have that being able to.
I just want to remind you with something too. With Excel and Word, you're right. There is an autosave. However, if by accidentally you click it off, it's all the way in the upper left-hand corner. So you got to be sure all the time that this thing is clicked on.
Okay.
So if you accidentally click it off, which is I ran into this issue, matter of fact, a week and a half ago, where the lady actually accidentally, I'm not sure her or her cat or whomever, but they clicked on that thing and they were off, and she was trying to ask me if I can retrieve her document. Okay. And I could not. It was,
there you go.
Just gone. So always it helps to just keep an eye up on the top that it's switched to on for autosave.
Okay. Well, you guys can talk as long as you like. I need to hop off to get on a call with Primary Solutions, but if you need anything, let us know. We'll answer whatever questions you have.
All right. Thank